Hello, today is the 7th of December 2018 and you're listening to the Australian Cannabis Review podcast. So thanks again for joining me this week. November's passed, so we're not talking about any more cannabis listed stocks on the Australian Stock Exchange. I want to talk about something a bit more interesting. I want to get away from talking about stocks. And I want to focus on the ACT, Canberra, our nation's capital, and what could hopefully be in the future the Mull Bowl of Australia. Now, Labor backbencher Michael Pettersson, he has introduced a private members bill before the Legislative Assembly, and what I think is a move that is well overdue and would bring us into line with countries such as Canada, the US, Portugal, Uruguay, all these countries who have legalized cannabis. And what this bill aims to do is to make it legal for adults to have 50 grams of cannabis or 4 marijuana plants for personal use only. Obviously, this is a huge move forward. The bill that's outlined it's kind of in its infancy stages, and it's touching on the Drugs of Dependence Act 1989. And what it really aims to do is to remove the drug from the definition of a prohibited substance and to make the drug a bit more readily available for those that choose to want to smoke it or do whatever they would like to do with it. And I'm really happy this is going forth. And when the ACT Legislative Assembly sat on the 28th of November, so just over a week ago, this bill was put forth, and I think they're going to go ahead with it. They're going to make a vote on it sometime in February of 2019. And I think there's a very good chance it'll pass. If we talk about the ACT Legislative Assembly for a moment, there are 25 seats, and the three parties that hold the seats is the Australian Labor Party, who hold 12 seats, the Liberal Party that hold 11 seats, and the Greens that hold 2 seats. So that makes up the 25, and you need 13 votes as a majority to pass legislation. Now, the great position that the Labor Party are in is that they formed a coalition government with the Greens. So together they've got 14 seats together, and that makes the majority, obviously. So when this is proposed in February, or when it goes to vote in the Legislative Assembly, the majority government are in the position to pass this legislation. And as I've already mentioned, this will bring us into line with a number of US states, even some really conservative states such as Washington and Massachusetts, legalization in Canada, Portugal, and Uruguay. So the ACT looks like they're in a really good position to be able to go through with this. So now, if we want to think of a hypothetical for a moment, if the ACT Legislative Assembly does go through with passing this bill, then they may face some opposition, because under Section 122 of the Australian Constitution, it provides that the Commonwealth Parliament may make laws for the government of any territory. So, in this case, the Commonwealth Parliament can exercise its power, which it enacted through the Territories Self-Government Legislation Amendment, brackets, Disallowance and Amendment of Laws, close brackets, Act 2011. So this allows the Commonwealth Parliament to retain a right to legislate for the territories in all matters, including power to override laws passed by the Assembly. So even though this is a very rare practice, this did actually occur when the Civil Unions Act 2006 was passed in the ACT, which allowed same-sex couples to enter into civil unions. And This was overruled by the Commonwealth, but in this case, I think it's something very different, especially when we have a number of countries that are already aligned with this practice of legalizing cannabis, and it's going to bring us more into line with the rest of the world. So, hopefully, no issues really arise from this. Now, how this is going to work exactly has been a matter of debate. We know that, like I've mentioned a few times now already, but I'll repeat it again. So we're changing the limit from 25 grams to 50 grams, and we're going to allow people to cultivate 4 plants. Now, the bill will retain penalties for possession above 50 grams, and cultivation of more than 4 plants will be illegal. Artificial cultivation will also remain illegal, and here's what I find very interesting and a very important point, is that sale will remain illegal, and sale and supply to minors will remain illegal as well, which is very understandable for the latter part. But in terms of creating an industry for this, I think this is just a little baby step, and I think that maybe it should be something considered. And what I'd also like to be considered is that if sale of cannabis will still remain illegal, well then at least let us have the opportunity to purchase seeds. Now, in many European countries where the purchase of cannabis is illegal, they still allow for the purchase and sale and importation of cannabis seeds. And this kind of goes more around the space of a collector and an enthusiast or a connoisseur of these kinds of products. So I'm really happy that we're taking these small steps in making these changes. However, I feel that we need to go forth a little bit more. As a classic example of what's happened in Uruguay, where the country did legalize cannabis, they still have a lot of very tight restrictions. Their pharmacies, they were reluctant, and probably, I think, still are reluctant to hold the product and sell it to the general public. It's very hard to grow the product. You still have to sign up and register. Canada's a little bit more advanced in this space, where they've actually just opened it up. Canada were actually already way more advanced in this space even before it came legalized. They still had dispensaries available. As I mentioned in previous podcasts, if you, for example, you went to a place called Victoria, a beautiful little town on Vancouver Island, the mayor there actually allowed for these dispensaries to remain open and for police not to interfere with the activities of these places. And there, in the year 2016, there were more dispensaries than there were bottle shops. And this is all in a time when this drug was still illegal nationwide. So the state that they're in, or the province that they're in, is British Columbia, so they were a little bit more advanced in that space, where you still needed a prescription from a doctor. But they were forward thinking, and I think it's very important that if Australia wants to go down this path, that we not only need to make changes to these bills, which these bills and acts that we're wanting to implement, for a better use of the word, we should also consider having an industry around it, because if the sale's still going to be illegal, then okay, how are we going to grow it? If the legislation around seeds is still the same as it is now, then we're not going to be able to import seeds either. So there is a lot of work to be done in this space. So even though we're moving forward, I think we really need to look at the bigger picture of this, and if people are able to possess these amounts, then that's great. I mean, We're going to save a lot of money from people having to go to courts. Police resources will be diverted, and so forth. So, as the community attitudes on cannabis are shifting and unbiased research has shown it is not a particular harmful substance, then we're going to head in the right direction. I mean, I've looked at some reports here, and despite causing 46 times less harm than alcohol, cannabis still remains legal in our society. I think we definitely have a lot of double standards when it comes to the use of these substances. Now, the bill, in addition to all the other benefits it'll bring, it will ease the burden on law enforcement, who spend over $1.1 billion every year on drug law enforcement in Australia. And this is according to the University of New South Wales-based Drug Policy Modelling Program. Now, according to the Australian Criminal Intelligence Commission's 2016 to 2017 illicit drug data report, over 50% of drug-related arrests in Australia, which is about 154,000 people, were cannabis-related, and 91% of those were consumer arrests, meaning that they were for small amounts. So from that information alone, I think our resources could be used much better. So, this briefly sums up the bill from Labor backbencher Michael Pettersson, member of Urabi. Now, I'm for this bill. I'm happy that they're going to vote for it. Once again, it's the Drugs of Dependence Amendment Bill, and it aims to provide amendments to reform the Drugs of Dependence Act 1989. Once again, we're talking about removing penalties for the personal use and carry of cannabis up to 50 grams, allow people to grow 4 plants naturally. If people want to consume or grow more than 4 cannabis plants, that'll be illegal. If people wish to carry more than 50 grams of cannabis, that'll be illegal. Artificial cultivation will remain illegal. Sale will remain illegal. There also have been some what I think are moot points discussed in the Canberra Times, where the police minister was worried about, because once it becomes legal, how will that affect drivers under the influence of cannabis? Well, this is a broad topic, but I'll cover it briefly. Alcohol is legal. If you have alcohol in your system while driving, that is illegal. So I think once cannabis becomes legal, it should probably, I highly agree, should be illegal to drive while under the influence of cannabis. Now, the discussion about how accurate this is, because the way they test for it includes cannabis in your system, and cannabis can remain in your system due to its fatty composition and the way it sticks in your system for a longer period of time than other substances. There's high chances of misdiagnosis. But this kind of discussion is for another time and place. So that wraps up our talk for this week. There's definitely going to be some more news to follow around this, and I'll keep you all posted. But in the meantime, I'd like to thank you all for listening. My name is Dan, and you're listening to the Australian Cannabis Review podcast. Now, if you want to get some more information, please visit cannabisontheasx.com. This is where we talk about and write about how the cannabis listed stocks are doing, some articles in this space, and just some general information to kind of get to know more about the cannabis industry in Australia. Also, if you wish, check back on some of our podcasts. So the November series was quite interesting. If you're interested to know what some of the other cannabis companies are doing in Australia, it's a definitely a very promising space, and we hope Australia kind of becomes a bit more aligned with the rest of the world. So once again, thank you very much, and I'll catch you next time. Bye bye.